A new report from Realtor.com paints a troubling picture for homeowners in Houston and beyond. More than $12 trillion worth of U.S. homes are at severe risk for climate-related threats, and Houston is right near the top of that list. According to the data, every single home in the Houston metro area faces extreme hurricane wind risk, and nearly $100 billion in local real estate is vulnerable to severe flooding. Rising insurance costs and tightening coverages are only adding fuel to the fire. So what does this mean for Houston's housing market, home buyers, and the future of living in one of America's largest cities? Joining us now is Joel Berner, the senior economist at Realtor.com, to walk us through the findings. And if you have a question for Joel, we welcome you to Hello Houston. If you would like to join that conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870. So, Joel, talk to us a little bit about the connection between extreme weather and real estate and how they impact each other just as a whole.
Absolutely. So what we've learned is that the climate risk is no longer tomorrow's problem. It really is a clear and present danger and a clear and present impact on homeowners and prospective home buyers. It's something that as a prospective home buyer, you need to take into account for when looking to buy a home. It's not just the cost of the home, the principal and interest on your payment. It's the insurance cost. And Houston ranks 10th in the country when it comes to insurance costs as a percentage of home values. A little over 1.5% of a home's value is what goes into the median insurance premium every year. So it's a real expense. It makes home ownership more difficult, and it's something that everyone needs to be conscious of when buying a home or maintaining a home that they already own.
Help me a tiny bit here, and then we can get back into the more depth of what you're here to talk about. But insurance costs. I keep hearing, insurance companies are deciding not to cover this house or that type of house or where it's located house. What are they free to do? Is there anything that regulates that and says if you're an insurance company, you must make insurance available to certain homes? Or are they free to decide this is too high a risk?
They're free to decide that a risk is too high for them to offer coverage in certain areas. And in California, there's the FAIR Act, which is a last resort insurance for homes in California. And what we've seen during the wildfires of recent years is that state-run program has had more applicants and more coverage than ever. We don't have something quite the same on that level in Texas, but insurance companies simply, if they can't make the math work, they won't.
So do these insurance companies look at it so specifically to say, well, a house in Houston is not likely to be destroyed by a wildfire, so therefore we won't offer wildfire insurance, or it'll be a minimal cost for that? Probably not earthquake insurance is necessary, certainly avalanche insurance. So do they parse it down and say, okay, but hurricanes and floods and tornadoes, that we have to really jack up the prices because those are real threats?
Absolutely. That all gets baked into the premium. And a lot of times flood coverage is a separate line item for insurance coverage. So it's really important to take note of what your base insurance package offers and whether you need to go ahead and add on the additional flood insurance or just increase that part of your premium. And an interesting finding from this study was that a lot of the flood mandated places that are mandated to carry flood insurance by FEMA doesn't have complete coverage over all the places with flood risk. And so we found, based on the data that we collect, that there's a lot of missing coverage when it comes to flood coverage. This is less the case in Houston because a lot of Houston is covered under the FEMA boundaries. But in different parts of the country, for one example is Western North Carolina. A lot of that was not in FEMA designated areas for flood insurance. But when Hurricane Helene came through, there was obviously terrible flooding in that area, and a lot of people were not covered.
But, as we're looking at this report, Houston made it on the total value of homes with severe or extreme flood risks. They also made it on wind risk, as well as highest insurance burden. So where does that leave people in Houston when we're almost on every list when it comes to extreme weather?
Yeah, it's certainly difficult, and it certainly is a challenge for homeowners. It just adds to the issues that we've seen for affordability in home ownership already. You know, with prices still high from the intense run up in 2021 and 2022, with mortgage rates still high, people are having a real affordability issue, and insurance coverage on top of that just makes it even more difficult. So it's something that needs to be taken into account by homeowners and prospective home buyers. And when you're budgeting for a new home, make sure you cover your insurance coverage in making a budget to see whether you can afford a home in a certain area based on the risks there and based on the estimated insurance costs.
We started talking a little bit about whether or not an insurance company chooses to insure you or not. If insurance companies opt not to insure because areas are prone to this kind of damage that we're talking about, if I understand correctly, too, oftentimes you cannot get a loan to purchase a house if you can't get insurance on that piece of property. Long term, what could this mean for vast areas of our city if they're in high risk areas and they can't owners can't get loans to buy these properties? Where are we headed?
Yeah, we're headed toward potentially a situation where it's unaffordable to live in these places. You're absolutely right. A lot of times, to get a mortgage, you need an insurance qualification, insurance coverage ahead of time to get approved by a company before you get a loan on the home. And so it means that in some areas that have been built up in floodplains or built up in places exposed to hurricane wind risk, it won't be possible for people to get loans there, and home values will fall in those areas just because it's impossible to afford owning a home there. And so if you can't get a loan and you can't get insurance, then those home values will fall. And so what's really important is that as we continue to expand in Texas and in Houston specifically, that we build in areas that are more resilient to those climate risks. Don't build in floodplains. Don't build where hurricane wind risks are high, but instead focus on building in areas that are more sustainable. So that needs to be a focus for builders and developers going forward.
But as we build these new areas, it shifts what is considered floodplains and wind risk because of the concrete and the rechanging of the topography.
Absolutely, and that gets factored in to what the insurance companies look at. The insurance companies have the best data in the business on this. They know exactly how these things are interconnected, and they will jack up your prices if things change and you become more exposed to these types of risks. So not only is it important for builders and developers to be thinking about this, but community leaders and local governments and even the federal government and FEMA to be constantly updating and constantly reassessing so that we've got the most accurate and up-to-date information on who is exposed and how much.
Joel, one of the advantages of the fact that we've been facing these climate changes for 20 years now is that we have seen extreme weather in this country, especially the last 10 years. So there is a way, it's not impossible, there is a way to build better and stronger. We have seen houses that have survived the wildfires because they were built properly. You can put metal roofs on a home and you will probably not sustain nearly as much wind damage because the roof won't be lost during a hurricane. The hail will not penetrate a metal roof. You can build a lot of your homes up so that if they're in a flood, and we see this in Houston, you go over to the Heights and look at where these houses are built. They're 6 feet off the ground and it looks beautiful. It's not like on stilts. It's just a grade. So if home builders, and I know it costs more, but when you factor in what does it do to the loan, what does it do to the insurance costs, it may well be worth it for these builders to say, I'm going to build you a house that will, as much as possible, withstand climate change.
You're exactly right. There's a lot of things that can be done, but they all cost money. And when homes are already at a point where they're so unaffordable, adding to the price of a new home makes it more difficult to find buyers. So it's a little bit of a risk. Builders are kind of, on one hand, want to deliver affordable inventory that they can sell easily. But if it gets to the point where those homes can't be insured, then essentially they don't have the value that they thought they had at all. So investing in those types of advanced construction methods is a great way to mitigate some of these risks and ensure that people can be insured. for lack of a better term. So I think that's really important. And we see really great new technology coming along in the home construction industry with 3D printed homes made out of concrete that can withstand hurricane force winds. And those homes are not cheap, but they're becoming cheaper as we advance the technology. So things will get better, but builders are smart and have an eye toward the future, and they need to stay that way.
But as we know that, about the real estate industry being a vulnerable industry to extreme weather, we know that extreme weather is common now. I haven't heard what type of revisions lenders and insurance companies need to be making besides deciding who they won't be covering.
Yeah, so really it comes down to the basic idea of insurance is that your low risk population kind of hedges the bets against your high risk population. And insurance companies generally pool these by state. And so there are places, in Michigan, let's say, where there's not likely to be hurricanes and wildfires. And what we could do is expand the pool of insured homes so that those lower risk areas cover the higher risk areas. Everybody will end up paying, according to their risk and according to their need. But expanding those pools a little bit might make it easier to expand coverage. And I think that's something that insurance companies are looking into.
Joel, I have a quick question. Is there any data on how much of a claim insurance companies actually pay? Because the big complaint is I pay all this money every year, and then when I finally have a claim, they don't want to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And what can happen is you can sign up for a policy and months or years later, it can be changed. So really staying on top of that as a homeowner is super important. When you first take out a policy, make sure that it's covered enough for the risks that your home is exposed to, and then work with your insurance broker to understand when changes happen. And maybe it means paying a little more every month to keep the coverage that you thought you had. But there are a lot of ways that things can kind of shift without people noticing, and that's when folks get in trouble.
I get that, but you didn't answer my question. Is there any data showing us what percentage of claims actually get paid and to what extent? Are people made whole, partially whole, quarter whole?
Yeah, I don't have any stats in front of me, but it depends on the terms of the policy. So, for example, roof coverage can be a full replacement or it can be a market value replacement. And that's a big difference if you have a roof that's a little bit older. A hailstorm or a windstorm comes and the market value of your roof may be only half of what your new roof is going to cost. That's all built in to the terms of the policy. So it really varies bit to bit. If I find anything, I'd love to follow up and let you know if I can find out exactly what percentage of claims get paid out in their entirety, but I don't have that in front of me.
And if we're looking at risky areas, because you mentioned how insurance companies look at a risky area and a non-risky area, Houston is obviously, we're on the list. So high insurance premiums have already started to push out lower income buyers and really squeeze current homeowners. So for our area, what does that mean exactly for people that are in a high risk area?
Yeah, it means the lack of access to generational wealth growth that comes with home ownership. And that's a real issue in this country when it comes to economic equity. Folks who can't get into home ownership don't have the ability to profit off of real estate value appreciation. And that just leads to more inequity throughout the country and in places like Houston, especially where those risks and the insurance coverage are keeping people out of home ownership. So there's not only just the kind of questions of, is my house covered? Is my house going to become a part of a statistic about extreme weather, but there's more to it there as well, like which vulnerable populations are being priced out of the type of home ownership and long-term wealth accumulation that some others who are more fortunate are already privy to.
To add into the mix of all of that and what Celeste just asked you, we keep hearing about the influx of more people moving into the area. Mm-hmm. We hear about more climate issues in our area. We've seen the shift in weather patterns. We've seen much more severe storms. And we also established early on that insurance companies may not want to take the risk on a lot of these properties. With all of those pieces mixed into what you and Celeste were just talking about, what do you see for the future, the immediate future of this area?
Yeah, I see affordability challenges continuing, and that's the name of the game across the country right now is people not being able to get into homes in the way that they want to. But as Houston continues to grow, we're going to have to be smarter about where we build, where we develop, and I'll tell you an advantage that Houston has is that they're very permissive zoning, or really not much zoning at all, and that allows builders to produce more inventory and really meet the market, where in other parts of the country with minimum lot sizes and parking requirements and things of that sort, there's just not the ability to build as much. So in Houston, we can build, but we need to build smart.
Final question for you. It's tariffs. Are they adding to the price of a home to be built? Nails come from other places, lumber, sheetrock, that sort of thing. Are we seeing a tariff effect on building a home?
We're seeing a slight tariff effect. To be honest, it's less than I anticipated. If you talk to builders right now, it seems to be something that they feel like they can absorb. But really what I think tariffs are doing is they're impacting consumer confidence. People are, just today we had a revision to the jobs numbers that showed a lot less hiring in the last year than we thought there was. And I think that economic uncertainty that comes from the tariffs, just the slowing down of international business. People are fearing for their jobs, and they're not as likely to make a home purchase when they do that. So I think that's kind of the indirect effect of tariffs is even greater than just the material costs that builders face.
Joel Berner is a senior economist at Realtor.com. Joel, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me.